Jake Torres shuffled into the medical bay, clutching his stomach and trying not to think about the questionable meatloaf he'd eaten in the galley 3 hours ago. In hindsight, purple probably wasn't a natural color for meatloaf, but he'd been hungry, and the label said beef adjacent, which seemed close enough. The medical bay doors hissed open with that sci-fi swoosh that still made Jake smile even after 6 months aboard the Harmony's Promise. The room was pristine white, filled with floating holographic displays and equipment that looked like someone had given a modern hospital a budget of infinite space dollars. Behind the main console stood Dr. Chirrut, the ship's medic, who looked like a praying mantis had a baby with a very concerned librarian. 4 crystalline eyes swiveled toward Jake, and his antennae twitched in what Jake had learned meant either curiosity or mild distress. With Chirrut, it was usually both. "Ah, human Jake." Chirrut clicked, his translator rendering the chittering sounds into a posh British accent for reasons Jake had never understood. "What brings you to my sterile sanctuary of healing?" "Hey, Doc." Jake groaned, slumping onto the examination platform. "I think I got food poisoning. My stomach feels like it's trying to audition for a death metal band." Chirrut's antennae went full distress mode. "Food poisoning? This is serious. Please remain still while I conduct a bioscan." Jake lay back and closed his eyes while Chirrut activated the scanner. A blue light washed over him, and he heard the pleasant beeping of alien medical technology doing its thing. This was fine, routine. He'd probably get some weird glowing pill and feel better in an hour. The beeping stopped. Then it started again, faster. Then it made a sound Jake could only describe as electronic screaming. Jake opened one eye. Is it supposed to do that?" Chirrut was staring at his display screen with all 4 eyes, which Jake knew was the equivalent of a human's jaw, hitting the floor. The medic's mandibles clicked rapidly, his translator struggling to keep up. No. This cannot be correct. The scanner must be malfunctioning." "What? Is it bad? Do I have space parasites?" Jake sat up. "Please tell me I don't have space parasites." "Worse," Chirrut whispered, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean, no, nothing is wrong. The equipment is simply broken. Very broken. Catastrophically broken." He smacked the console with one of his 4 arms. "Useless galactic standard technology." Jake watched as Chirrut pulled out what looked like a space-age iPad and scanned him again. Same electronic screaming. Then a third device. More screaming. By the 4th scanner, Jake was getting concerned. "Doc, you're kind of freaking me out here." Chirrut's antennae had gone completely flat against his head, which Jake had learned meant he was either terrified or about to molt, and it definitely wasn't molting season. "Human Jake, please define bad lunch." No, the meatloaf tasted weird. Made my stomach hurt. Standard food poisoning stuff." Jake paused. "Why are you backing away from me?" "No reason. No reason at all. Please excuse me for one moment." Chirrut backed toward his office door, all 4 eyes still locked on Jake. "Do not move. Do not touch anything. Do not, under any circumstances, vomit." That's weirdly specific, but Chirrut had already disappeared into his office. Jake could hear frantic clicking and the universal sound of someone making a panicked phone call across any species. He caught fragments through the door. Impossible readings, hull grade corrosive, and most concerning, notify the captain immediately. Jake looked down at his stomach. It gurgled ominously. "I should have just had the salad," he muttered. 3 minutes later, the medical bay doors whooshed open again, and in oozed Goopson, the ship's chief medical officer. Jake had always thought Goopson looked like someone had asked a slug to wear a lab, coat and take life very seriously. The gelatinous being rippled across the floor, leaving a trail of medical-grade slime that cleaning drones immediately appeared to sanitize. "Chirrut, this better be important," Goopson burbled, his translator giving him the voice of a perpetually exhausted middle manager. "I was in the middle of a very delicate procedure on Ensign Pliplop's secondary spleen." "It's the human," Chirrut chittered, pointing one arm at Jake while maintaining a distance of at least 10 feet. "Scan him, please. Tell me I'm hallucinating." Goopson's eye stalks swiveled toward Jake with the enthusiasm of someone being asked to work overtime. "The human looks fine. Slightly pale, perhaps, but that appears to be their default state. Just scan him." Sighing in a way that made his entire body jiggle, Goopson produced his own medical scanner and waved it vaguely in Jake's direction. The device beeped once, twice, then made a sound like a cat being strangled by a synthesizer. Goopson's eye stalks went rigid. "What in the name of the Galactic Council, right?" Chirrut clicked frantically. "That's what I said. Well, not exactly that, but the sentiment was identical. Jake raised his hand like he was back in school. Hi. Yeah, still here. Still have no idea what's happening. Would love some context. Goopson oozed closer to his scanner display, reading the results with both eye stalks, while his body quivered. This says your stomach acid has a pH level of 1.5. Okay? Jake shrugged. Is that bad? Bad? Goopson's voice rose an octave. Human Jake, our ship's hull plating can withstand direct laser fire, micrometeorite impacts, and the vacuum of space. Your stomach acid could dissolve it in under an hour. Jake blinked. Seriously? The scanner doesn't lie, Chirrut added, venturing slightly closer now that Goopson was taking point. Your internal body temperature would give most species third-degree burns. Your blood pressure would literally explode our cardiovascular systems. And your immune system. He gestured wildly with all four arms. Your immune system is actively fighting off approximately 4,000 different pathogens right now that would liquefy our entire species in minutes. Huh. Jake looked down at his hands like he was seeing them. For the first time, that's actually pretty metal. Metal? Goopson's eye stalks tilted in confusion. Cool. Awesome. You know, impressive. Impressive. Goopson's entire body inflated to twice its normal size, which Jake had learned meant extreme distress. Human Jake, you are a walking biological apocalypse. Your saliva contains enzymes that would be classified as chemical weapons on 17 different planets. Your bite force could crush our skeletal structures like... He struggled for a comparison. Like a human biting a potato chip? Jake offered helpfully. Yes, exactly. Wait, no, that makes it worse. Goopson deflated slightly, then reinflated. And you're telling me you feel unwell right now? What happens when you're healthy? I mean, I can usually open jars pretty easily. Goopson made a sound like a balloon losing air and collapsed into a puddle on the medical bay floor. His translator crackled weakly. I need a moment. Chirrut rushed over with what looked like smelling salts, waving them near Goopson's eye stalks. Stay with us, Chief. We need you lucid. Jake slid off the examination table. Look, I get that this seems bad, but I've been on this ship for 6 months and haven't dissolved anything. Well, except that one chair in the rec room, but I'm pretty sure that was already broken. Both doctors stared at him. That chair dissolved because you sat in it? Chirrut whispered. Maybe. I sweat a little during workouts, but... Your sweat. Goopson had recovered enough to reform into a sitting position. Your sweat is corrosive. It's not corrosive, it's just salty. Salt is corrosive to 42 species. Okay. Geez. Jake held up his hands in surrender. What do you want me to do about it? I can't exactly stop being human. Chirrut and Goopson exchanged a look that needed no translation. It was the universal expression of two medical professionals realizing they were in way over their heads. We need to inform the captain, Goopson said finally. This is beyond our pay grade. Agreed, Chirrut clicked. Human Jake, please remain here. Touch nothing. Breathe minimally. How do I breathe minimally? Figure it out. They both scrambled toward the exit, leaving Jake alone in the medical bay with a very uncomfortable realization. He might actually be the scary one in space. His stomach gurgled again. He really should have had the salad. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself sitting in the corner of the ship's conference room, a bag of chips in his lap, and a growing sense that his day was about to get significantly weirder. Around the glossy black table sat the senior staff of the Harmonies. Promise. All of them shooting him nervous glances when they thought he wasn't looking. Captain Relic sat at the head of the table, his reptilian features arranged in what Jake recognized as deep concern. The captain's scales were usually a calm blue, but right now they flickered between yellow and orange, which meant he was stressed. His tail twitched rhythmically against his chair. Let me see if I understand this correctly, Relic said slowly, his forked tongue flicking out between words. Our human crew member is, biologically speaking, a weapons-grade threat to this vessel. That's overstating it, Jake mumbled through a mouthful of chips. Every head in the room swiveled toward him. The crunching sound echoed in the sudden silence. Sorry, Jake said. Nervous eater. Doctor. Chirrut, who'd positioned himself as far from Jake as physically possible while remaining in the room, raised one arm tentatively. Captain, the scans don't lie. Human biology is, to put it mildly, incompatible with galactic norms. Incompatible. Commander Vils, the ship's security chief, leaned forward. She looked like a very angry purple bear with 6 arms, and right now all 6 were crossed. Is that what we're calling walking hazmat situations now? I prefer Jake, Jake offered. Vils ignored him. Captain, I've been saying for months that allowing a Death Worlder onto this ship was a security risk. This proves it. For all we know, he's a biological weapon sent to infiltrate the fleet. Oh, come on, Jake protested. I applied through the normal channels, filled out all the forms, even paid the application fee, which was ridiculous, by the way. A likely story, Vils muttered. Lieutenant Fizzle, the ship's engineer, had been quietly tapping on a datapad throughout the discussion. The small, fox-like alien finally looked up, her whiskers twitching. I hate to make this worse, but I did some research on human homeworld conditions while we've been talking. And? Relics? Prompted. Fizzle's ears flattened against her head. Earth is classified as a Class 4 death world. The room erupted in gasps and clicks, and one very dramatic deflation from Goopson. Class 4? Relix's scales went full orange. That's the same classification as the burning wastes of Kraxon 7. Worse, actually, Fizzle continued, reading from her pad. Earth has unpredictable weather patterns that can shift from life-supporting to lethal in hours. Temperature variations of over 50 degrees Celsius. Predatory species on every continent. And approximately 300,000 plant species, of which roughly 10% are actively trying to kill you. For fun, Jake added. Plants on Earth are kind of jerks. For fun? Chiric's antennae nearly vibrated off his head. Why would plants attempt murder recreationally? Jake shrugged. Evolution, I guess? Keeps things interesting. Interesting, Commander Vils said the word, like it tasted bad. Humans find lethal flora. Interesting. I mean, not all of them. Some are just poisonous. Those are boring. Jake caught everyone staring at him again. What? Fizzle scrolled further down her datapad. It says here that humans evolved as persistence hunters. They literally chase prey until it dies of exhaustion. That's not murder. That's cardio, Jake protested. They also form pack bonds with other species, Fizzle continued, including former prey animals and apex predators. Current records show humans living in harmony with creatures that could easily kill them. Dogs are great, Jake said defensively. And cats. Cats are awesome. You live with predators voluntarily? Goopson had reformed enough to speak. As pets? Well, yeah. They're fluffy. The room fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines, and Jake's continued chip crunching. Finally, Captain Relic spoke. Human Jake, I need to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. Shoot. Please don't say shoot, Chiric whimpered. Figure of speech, Jake clarified. Go ahead, Captain. Relix's tail stopped twitching. Where exactly on Earth are you from? Cleveland. And is Cleveland considered a particularly dangerous region of your death world? Jake thought about this. I mean, the weather's pretty rough, and the sports fans can get intense, but mostly it's just, Cleveland. Just Cleveland, Relix repeated slowly. Yeah, it's not like I'm from Australia or anything. Those guys are hardcore. There are more dangerous regions? Vils's fur stood on end. Well, sure. Australia has, everything that wants to kill you. Spiders the size of dinner plates, snakes, jellyfish, drop bears. Drop bears? Several voices shouted at once. Okay, those might be a myth, but the point stands. Cleveland's pretty tame comparatively. Captain Relix looked around the table at his senior staff, then back at Jake, who was fishing another chip out of his bag without a care in the universe. Why, the captain said quietly. Were humans allowed into the Galactic Council? Goopson reformed enough to ripple in what passed for a shrug, because no one wanted to tell them no. Smart policy, Jake said, offering the chip bag around the table. Anyone want some? There's sour cream and onion. Everyone recoiled like he'd offered them live grenades. More for me then. Jake went back to eating, completely missing the looks of existential dread being exchanged around the conference table. Captain Relix rubbed his temples with both clawed hands, a gesture he'd picked up from Jake, and now deeply regretted learning. Dr. Chiric, give us the full briefing. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. Chiric activated the holographic display at the center of the table. A rotating image of human anatomy appeared, labeled with warnings in 17 languages. Where do I even begin? The beginning is usually good, Jake offered. Fine. Humans breathe oxygen. Chiric pointed at the gray lung diagram. Oxygen. which is one of the most corrosive substances in the known galaxy. Most species use it in controlled industrial applications. Humans fill their atmosphere with 21% of it and inhale constantly. Gotta breathe something, Jake said. They also consume toxins recreationally. Chirrut pulled up a new display showing molecular structures. Ethanol, which is literal poison. Caffeine, which is a pesticide. Capsaicin, which evolved specifically to cause pain in mammals. Humans put all of these in their bodies on purpose and call it brunch. Lieutenant Fizzle's ears perked up. Wait, the hot sauce thing is real? I thought that was a hazing ritual. Nope, we just like spicy food. Jake grinned. Makes you feel alive. You feel alive by triggering your pain receptors? Goopson burbled in horror. Yeah, pretty much. Chirrut continued, clearly on a roll now. Their fight-or-flight response floods their system with adrenaline, a chemical that would put most upsaluting Aris species into immediate cardiac arrest. This allows them to temporarily ignore pain, lift objects several times their body weight, and continue fighting even with catastrophic injuries. One time my uncle pulled a car off someone with a broken arm, Jake added helpfully. Why would you tell us that? Vils shouted. You asked? The hologram shifted to show cellular regeneration. Humans heal by literally growing themselves back together, Chirrut explained. Broken bones fuse stronger than before. Damaged tissue regenerates. Some human organs can even regrow portions of themselves. The liver thing is pretty cool, Jake agreed. You can donate half and it just grows back. Captain Relix's scales had gone full crimson. Anything else we should know? Chirrut's antennae drooped. They're persistence pack bonders. They form irrational emotional attachments to virtually anything. Other humans, animals, plants, inanimate objects. There are documented cases of humans bonding with cleaning. Robots. Roombas are adorable, Jake protested. They do their best. They also rarely give up on tasks or individuals they've bonded to, Chirrut continued. They will pursue objectives long past the point of rationality. Some human rescue operations have lasted years. We don't leave people behind, Jake said quietly, and for the first time since entering the room, nobody had a sarcastic response. Commander Vils broke the silence. Captain, with all due respect, how did the Galactic Council approve human membership? These beings are clearly designed for warfare. Actually, Fizzle interjected, pulling up another file. According to the integration records, the human delegation arrived unarmed, brought gifts, and spent most of the approval hearing apologizing for being late. Something about traffic on the moon base. We're very polite, Jake confirmed. Usually, Goopson rippled forward. Captain Relix, I must ask the obvious question. Why were humans not flagged as a threat? During initial contact, Relix's tail twitched. Because they looked harmless. Soft skin, no natural weapons, relatively small compared to most species. The contact team assumed they were prey animals that had somehow achieved space travel. In our defense, Jake said, we get that a lot back home too. Then we invented nuclear weapons, and everyone got real quiet about the prey thing. The room went silent again. Right, Captain Relix said finally. That's enough existential dread for one meeting. The question now is, what do we do about human Jake? All eyes turned to Jake, who was crumpling up his empty chip bag. I could just go back to my quarters, he suggested. Pretend this meeting never happened? I'm very good at denial. We noticed, Chirrut muttered. Jake set down his empty chip bag and stood up, trying to project harmlessness. Look, I get that this is freaking everyone out, but I've been here 6 months without any incidents. Well, major incidents. The chair thing was an accident. You dissolved a chair, Vils repeated flatly. It was already weak, but that's not the point. Jake smiled in what he hoped was a reassuring way. Several crew members flinched. The point is, I'm totally harmless. Let me prove it. Cultural exchange. I'll share some human snacks. You guys can see we're not all scary. And we move past this whole biological weapon misunderstanding. Captain Relix's scales flickered uncertainly. I suppose that's reasonable. Great. Jake pulled his backpack from under the table. I've got beef jerky, some energy drinks, and oh, perfect, a bag of warheads. Warheads? Chirrut's translator crackled with static. You brought weapons to a peace offering? No, they're candy. Sour candy. Super popular on Earth. Jake dumped the items on the conference table. The colorful packages looked absurdly cheerful under the harsh meeting room lights. Dr. Goopson oozed toward the beef jerky package. eye stalks extended cautiously. This appears to be preserved muscle tissue. Yeah, it's dried beef, protein snack. Humans have been making it for thousands of years. You eat other animals? Lieutenant Fizzle's whiskers twitched. Sure, we're omnivores. We eat pretty much everything. Jake caught their expressions. Is that not normal? Most species eat synthesized nutrients or vegetation, Chirrut explained, keeping his distance. Consuming other organisms is considered somewhat barbaric. Oh. Jake looked at his beef jerky with new eyes. Huh. Well, it's really good. Anyone want to try? Silence. Come on, don't be scared. It's just food. Commander Vils, after a long moment, reached out with one of her 6 arms and grabbed a piece of jerky. If I die, put in my report that this was the captain's idea. Noted, Relic said dryly. Vils sniffed the jerky, recoiled, sniffed it again, then took the tiniest possible bite. Her eyes widened. She chewed slowly, thoughtfully, then swallowed. It's actually not terrible. Extremely salty. Would probably dehydrate me in quantity, but the flavor is interesting. See? Jake beamed. Human food isn't that bad. Encouraged, Fizzle grabbed an energy drink. She examined the can with professional curiosity. Warning label says contains high amounts of caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins. Should I be concerned about the skull imagery on the packaging? That's just marketing. It's totally safe. Fizzle popped the tab and took a sip. Her entire body went rigid. Her fur stood straight up. Her eyes dilated to twice their normal size. What is happening? That's the caffeine kicking in. You feel energized, right? I feel like I could rewire the entire engine core with my teeth. Yeah, that tracks. Jake nodded. Maybe stick to half a can next time. Fizzle set down the drink with a shaking paw. Humans drink this for breakfast? Sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. Monsters, she whispered, but she didn't push the can away. Emboldened by the lack of casualties, Ensign Pliplop, a small crystalline being who'd been silent throughout the meeting, floated toward the warheads. May I try the war candy? Sure, but heads up, they're super sour. Might be intense. I appreciate the warning. Pliplop picked up a green warhead with delicate crystal appendages and popped it into what Jake assumed was a mouth. For exactly 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then Pliplop began glowing bright red, then purple, then a color Jake didn't have a name for. The ensign started making a high-pitched whistling sound that kept rising in frequency until everyone had to cover their ears. Medical emergency! Chirrut grabbed his kit and rushed toward Pliplop, who was now rotating rapidly and flashing like a disco ball having a seizure. Is he dying? Jake asked, genuinely concerned. The acid levels are overwhelming his crystalline matrix. Goopson extended a pseudopod to scan the ensign. Quick! Get him to the medbay! They rushed Pliplop out of the conference room, leaving Jake alone with the remaining senior staff and a very awkward silence. So, Jake said eventually, that could have gone better. You think? Vils growled, but Jake noticed she was sneaking another piece of beef jerky. Captain Relics pinched his snout. Human Jake, I think we need to establish some ground rules. 2 hours later, Jake stood in his newly assigned quarters, which were approximately 3 times the size of his old room, and located in an isolated section of the ship that the crew had started calling the Human Zone. He had his own bathroom, a kitchenette with clearly labeled human food only storage, and windows that actually showed real space instead of the holographic projections everyone else got. There was a knock at his door. Well, more of a hesitant tap. Come in, Jake called. Captain Relics entered, looking significantly less stressed than he had during the meeting. His scales had returned to their normal blue. Human Jake, I wanted to personally deliver the new protocols. Hit me with it. Please don't say hit. Relics handed him a datapad. We're implementing what we're calling Protocol Human. No surprise physical contact with crew members. All human food must be stored separately with biohazard warnings. You have exclusive use of the galley between 19 and 2000 hours. So I'm quarantined? You're being given premium accommodations for safety reasons. Relics' expression softened slightly. Ours and yours. We did some additional research. Apparently most alien food would give you severe intestinal distress. Yeah, that tracks. The meatloaf was a gamble. Jake scrolled through the protocols. This isn't so bad, actually. I kind of like having my own space. There's more. Relics' tail twitched. You've become something of a celebrity. The crew is calling you the Death Worlder we let live here. Several species have requested cultural exchange meetings, supervised ones, with medical staff on standby. Really? Jake couldn't help but grin. That's awesome. Also, Dr. Chirek will continue to be your primary physician, but he's requested permission to treat you while wearing full hazmat equipment. Whatever makes him comfortable. Relics moved toward the door, then paused. Human Jake, may I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you actually comfortable living among species who find you terrifying? Jake thought about this, looking out his window at the stars streaking past. Captain, I spent 6 months thinking I was the weak one on this ship. Everyone else had natural armor, or multiple limbs, or could survive in vacuum. I'm just a squishy human from Cleveland. Finding out I'm actually kind of scary? Honestly, it's the best thing that's happened to me all year. Relix's scales flickered with what Jake had learned was amusement. You're a very strange being, human Jake. Thanks. I try. After the captain left, Jake pulled out his communication pad and dialed home. His mom's face appeared on the screen, her hair in curlers and reading glasses perched on her nose. Jakey, how's space treating you? Pretty good, Mom. I got a promotion. Kind of. They gave me better quarters. That's wonderful. Are you making friends? Jake thought about Commander Ville's sneaking beef jerky, Lieutenant Fizzle vibrating from caffeine overdose, and Ensign Pliplop currently recovering in medical from a warhead-induced crisis. Yeah, Mom. I'm making friends. Slowly. Very, very slowly. That's my boy. Oh, before I forget, your Aunt Carol wants to visit. Should I tell her how to apply for one of those visitor passes? Jake imagined Aunt Carol, who once fought off a raccoon with just a broom and sheer determination, unleashed on the Harmony's promise. Maybe let's wait a bit on that. Don't want to overwhelm the crew. If you say so, dear. Stay safe out there. Always do, Mom. After ending the call, Jake lay back on his new bed, which was actually long enough for his legs, and smiled at the ceiling. Somewhere down the corridor, he could hear nervous chittering as crew members walked past the human zone. His stomach finally settled after Dr. Chirek had given him some antacids while wearing full protective gear. No longer felt like a death metal audition. Tomorrow he'd start his shift in engineering, where Lieutenant Fizzle had requested his help with some heavy lifting that apparently required Death Worlder strength. Next week, he was scheduled to give a presentation on Earth cuisine to the Xenobiology department, with strict instructions that it be theoretical only. Jake Torres, the scary human from Cleveland, had finally found his place in the galaxy. It just turned out that place came with warning labels.